Welcome to the 34th episode of Tokenizing Everything, our weekly interview series with thought leaders in the blockchain industry. Today's guest is Peter Eulberg, co-founder and CEO at AnyBlock Analytics. Before we begin, I have to mention that all opinions are solely personal and do not reflect the opinion of Amazing Blocks or any other involved party. So it's a pleasure to meet you here today. Peter, how are you?
Fine, thanks. Thanks for the invite. Happy to be here. This time tuning in from Paris right after ECC. It's a beautiful day, and yeah, all is good.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. We'll definitely speak a bit about the Ethereum Community Conference in a bit. Would you like to just briefly start by giving an introduction of who you are and how you kind of entered the blockchain space in the first place?
Sure. As you mentioned, Peter Eulberg, CEO and co-founder of AnyBlock Analytics. We founded the company with three founders, Sascha Goebel, Freddy Zwanzer, and me, summer 2018. Raised the seed round in Mainz, Germany, or autumn 2019, and now are profitable since autumn last year, so 2020. And by now we are actually since yesterday morning 16 team members. We are a remote-only company, so in Mainz there's only a head of finance and me, and everyone else is spread around our time zone plus minus 2-3 hours. So that includes Portugal, Poland, Nigeria, and Sofia, I think, Bulgaria. Yeah, so I joined the space, I think, around 2015, when my ex-study colleague, Heiko Hayes, from Brainbot and the Raiden project gave me my first Bitcoin. And I actually had to pay with that Bitcoin the same evening for a beer. So there was just some 0.0 something Bitcoin left, but I still have the wallet and I still have the 0.0 something Bitcoin. I wasn't too fond of the Bitcoin thing and I didn't really get it. But then when Ethereum came around, and since I'm an IT generalist and did consulting for many years and know to code and how to operate Linux machines and stuff, this resonated with me because it's actually a virtual machine. It's just more than just money. And that's how I got involved with Heiko more, with the Brainboard in Mainz and their Raiden ICO. Yeah. And out of this relationship then came the first product, which is now called AnyBlock Index and is one of our core services.
Yeah, very interesting. Thanks for sharing that path. I think, a lot of people, kind of for them, it was quite difficult to understand, so to say, the necessity of Bitcoin, but then, really Ethereum is what kicked off the interest. I mean, for me, it was kind of the same, and especially dApps on top of Ethereum, right, that are being built that really, allow a true mainstream adoption to kind of evolve in the next years. So you looking at your bio, right, and you mentioned already you're an IT generalist, right? So you've always dealt with technology. Maybe going back in time a bit, what initially sparked your interest in technology in the first place? What made you decide that, okay, you want to go all in your career, so to say, on this sector?
Well, I suppose it's part of my personality. Maybe I even inherited from my dad. So I'm one of those, I'm not sure if I get the English word properly, a self-actuating a person. So I think that I can change the world. There's like this famous citation, I can't recollect properly, but Steve Jobs said, once you find out that the world, the law and everything is made by people, and you can change those things, then you kind of see that it's not just destiny or luck or bad luck. And this is the basis that brought me into IT. And then also I'm at heart, I would say, a lazy person. So if you write something once on the computer and give it some power, it will repeat that stuff until death, forever. And that resonated with me also as well. So I think technology is one of those things that will humans as a whole on the planet further quite a bit, and one could actually argue it's a necessity, but overall I think the whole idea of capitalism and us needing to work for money and status, it starts to look or sound a little antiquated, maybe. And I think I was born in '73, so and my dad was involved in buying the first computers for a big brandy company. And I'm not sure. At some point, he said, "You got to do something with computers. They'll change everything." And I uh, then wired the first hostel in University of Mainz after coming back from New Zealand, where internet was free for all students. So, and we didn't have that luxury in, I think, '96 it was then. Um, but then it was clear the internet will be everywhere, computers will be connected, and this leap of productivity will creep into everybody's life. So I didn't foresee the whole mobile phone stuff, and I didn't foresee how massively this will be with connected computers or even then blockchain now. But for me, today, one could argue it's like evolutionary steps. It's a continuation of digitalization. If you break everything down in zeros and ones, that's a very powerful approach, and it creeps in every piece of everyone's life now. And yeah, I think this will continue. But I like that. It's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we can all be sure that you made the right decision back then to jump into the space. So props to your dad at this point as well, right?
Yeah,
For
and one more
guiding
addition.
you.
Actually, I studied biology. So,
Hmm.
but then I started the first company, and I never finished biology. So I got a bachelor in New Zealand,
Yeah.
but so I'm graduated. But in my world, people typically don't care anymore. It's all about
Mm.
computers and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in the blockchain space, no one really cares about these credentials anymore that
Yeah,
much, right? So
yeah,
yeah, it's the beauty of the space. I think it's more about results.
yes.
So, since you have a vast experience in the tech sector, one question I would maybe want to ask at this point is, people always or often, compare the evolution of blockchain to the evolution of the internet, right? Would you agree with this statement, or what is your take on this if you could compare the path of these two technologies?
Yeah, I tend to agree, but I'm not sure if it's that comparable. And I wonder what the speed of adaptation is because blockchain is very fundamental. So maybe we are more talking TCP IP, so base technology, ports, domain name services, those things. So I think we are on our way to build higher level applications on top of that. So it is somewhat comparable, but I'm pretty sure if you take, let's say, the chip, the transistor, the computer, the network, and now blockchain, that is definitely something I would say is an evolutionary step up. And there might even be more. I'm not too sure about artificial intelligence or quantum computers, but I'm very sure that blockchain is a necessity to make computer networks and digital interaction more effective and more efficient. Because what I always tell the people to explain what blockchain enables, in the internet, everything is a copy. So I have an MP3, people know MP3. I will give it to you. Now we have two MP3s, exactly the same. But the blockchain enables us, I have something, I give it to you, I don't have it anymore. And we agree on that digitally over the wire. And that's some sort of magic. If you think about it, uh, on computer, actually, I think the default action of a chip is a copy, not a move. And this is a move. So you take something away and put it somewhere else, and we agree. And so I think, yes, it's comparable, but maybe even a necessity. Something like this had to happen.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's you perfectly said it. It's the next step of an evolution, right? The Web 3.0 that's now kind of, you know, disrupting our lives. So, taking it one step further, you were a consultant in the IT industry. You obviously explored different areas there. Then you co-founded AnyBlock Analytics. So, what is AnyBlock Analytics? Can you give us some insight as to what you guys do and actually what kind of made you found this, quite, sustainable business now already, because I don't think many businesses nowadays in the blockchain space can already say that they're profitable.
Yeah. Well, and that's because we are like at heart, not really the blockchain company. So what we do, we provide infrastructure and data for blockchain and maybe a couple of tools as well. But we have two logical departments. The first one is the software as a service things we do. And the second one we call machine to machine generalized mining department. In SaaS, we have three offerings, which is RPC as a service. So we have a couple of nodes for several blockchains, and we offer them behind a load balancer, including GDPR compliant, really quick access time, service level agreements, for example. So it's a typical service. You can actually compare that to Infura or Alchemy. So that is a market that is existing, and people know that they would like to buy it because operation of nodes can be troublesome, let's say. It's I wouldn't say, or I would say most blockchain technology is not really enterprise ready yet. So that leaves, we are still in the early ages of service providing and infrastructure. Maybe at the end it comes down to like a website for $5 a month, but I don't see that in the next 5 years. So it will still be advanced knowledge in operations, upgrading, upkeep for these blockchain nodes. So that is the first thing. This is where we're actually looking for product market fit. We do advertisements and so forth. And we have quite interesting customers. For example, the Börse Stuttgart is one of them, Tangani as a custody provider, and a couple of more. But the core in SaaS is actually AnyBlock Index, and that came out of Brainbot, because they did their token release and they wanted to know who is having how many tokens. And there used to be an Elasticsearch company, so they created this idea. We have an ETH events database, so a database for Ethereum that comprises all events, and you can search that using Elasticsearch DSL. So you can query for anything, essentially time series, buckets, do math in the database, min-max, all those things natively, because what's happening on blockchain typically is all data is binary and hex. And if you would like to do something in database, or essentially also for data science in a higher level, you need to interpret that data. And on Ethereum, you have the so-called ABIs, application binary interface, and then you can translate that data in keys and values, function calls and arguments. And then you can actually interpret the numbers into floats. Or based on that, you can do math and get meaningful data from blockchain. This is a higher concept. Actually, I think many blockchain companies, we call them blockchain natives, in contrast to banks, for example, and we only have blockchain native customers. We don't do any projects anymore, but these blockchain native companies, if they interact with the blockchain, for example, they have a smart contract or systems of smart contracts, they would like to know who's using it, how do they use it, is it working properly? I need statistics, I need a user interface for my user, I need a dashboard, I would like to integrate that with master data on ERP or CRM. I maybe would like to build a mobile application, and for all those things, you start caching. So you're asking the node and you build your own database. And our solution is to deliver that readily. So you can use standard query languages like SQL and Elasticsearch, query any block index, and therefore the data is already all there. If it's not, you can upload the ABI, we will interpret it, and there you have it. So that's quite flexible, but this market is not very mature yet. So blockchain native groups and companies try to do that themselves. Then they run into trouble with reorgs and uncles, for example. Then it's hard to run archive nodes. You need those for going back in time. It's hard to interpret internal transactions and dumps. So there's all sorts of hurdles, and that sums up quite a bit of effort just for your single application. And we would like to take that effort away, so, or ease it at least. So that's the second product. And then once people start using the database, they tend to poll and looking for changes all the time, because we index the data in real time. And actually from the occurrence in the block into the index is less than 500 milliseconds guaranteed. So it's quite quick. So we invented any block alerting. You can store arbitrary conditionals with us. And then if they are met, if we find them in the block, we will either notify you, email, webhooks, you name it, or you can store a query with us and we run that query and send you the result right away. So that's also super efficient. And that's kind of the mindset we have at any block. We would like to make things easier for, let's say, the technical level, for adoptability. It's not for end users yet. We might have some query builder in the far future. But if you're someone who does meaningful things with blockchains, I think we are a good bet that we can help you reducing cost in infrastructure, in data handling, yeah, in providing those things. So that is the SaaS section, but we also eat our own dog food. So in the machine-to-machine generalized mining sections, we operate, for example, Chainlink oracles. Meanwhile, I think on some free blockchains. Ah, yeah, and I forgot the whole SaaS and RPC we have for some 20 plus blockchains. And we keep that extending, including Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum-based blockchains like XDAI, or consortia chains like Energy Web Foundation. And this closes the cycle for the machine-to-machine department. We run validator nodes for Energy Web Chain, some private networks with Quorum, JLO validator. I mentioned the Chainlink node operation, and we are also a subgraph hoster or graph operator. Yeah. So, and we are very interested to extend those services because also, again, there's a win-win. For example, we just got a grant from the Graph Foundation to help the graph indexes to locate more profitable subgraphs to host. And we finished a grant from Chainlink we received beginning of year to display the profitability of each job on each oracle for each oracle providers. And so you see, we can actually provide value not just by supporting infrastructure in a decentralized manner, but also to feed that data back to these organizations and network of people, groups, so they can be, again, more efficient, have it more easily, and see the data so it's meaningful for them and they can act on that data. So that is what AnyBlock is doing in the broadest sense.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot, right? It's a very impressive resume, I think. You know, you are addressing a very crucial area of the sector in general, right? The data area. I think it's going to be quite interesting in the future when, you know, at some point, you know, it will be more common also to tokenize, for instance, data sets. You know, that will probably make this entire space even more dynamic. So yeah, I mean, maybe since you have a lot of experience, you know, through your day-to-day business in regards to setting up nodes, what would you describe as the core challenges maybe that you face on the one hand when doing it maybe internally, and on the other hand when dealing with clients on that regard?
With clients is the agility, so things move fast. For example, with Chainlink, they grow quickly, and we actually love that. So there is not much like in the traditional information technology space. You would like to have some sort of requirement specification. There's just a little job description. This is a new whatever job offer. So we need to code that quickly, or even get the code supplied, or it's some different template, just like minor changes. But the agility is really interesting for us, and we like that because it's let's say a prosperous agility, and that's actually happened to all of them. That's also true for the graph. It's also true for JLO, and we are not alone. Like Deutsche Telekom MMI is also operating these nodes. So I think building out this infrastructure layer, proof of stake, proof of authority, specific blockchain, we are strong believer of there will be many chains in the future. And therefore, that this is happening in that speed and is also somewhat profitable, that's a good sign. So there's maturity happening quite quickly. So for the operation side, the challenges, as I mentioned, it's not enterprise ready. So things break all the time, and weird things. Actually, I'm not the specialist. I would need to talk to Sasha, the CTO, but I'm pretty sure in Robson or something, if we sync Robson from the Genesis block, there is some bad blocks in there. So it will always stop, it will always break, it will always hang, and you have to try it several times, and at some point it'll get over the synchronization of that block, and then it's like working again properly from there on. So, well, it's a test net, obviously. So they're allowed to do that. But in general, I talked to some specialists yesterday, and they were not very fond on Polygon, for example. I thought like it's a hipster project. I haven't looked into the details yet. But anyways, we are very early. So there is still risk associated. So if you put a lot of money on very new technology, I would say this amounts to a high risk. I think for Ethereum mainnet, it's okay. So we haven't seen any big trouble for quite a while, besides maybe gas price hikes. And even that, there's evolution in code that they want to reduce the pressure on gas price. Or then at the end, layer 2, beacon chain, you name it, several approaches. But this is a space that is moving, and it's still early, and therefore, depending on what you're looking at, it's risky. It's not easy to operate. It's actually, I'm still doing this. If I'm sending big transactions, I still send a little amount first and see if it's going through. That's like, you wouldn't do this in banking in Germany, but you would. I think you should do it in blockchain still, at least for the address. Once you've used it, you can use it several times. Keep an address book for addresses. So it's value we are talking about mostly, and it could be high value, and therefore I think we need to mature more on the overall space. So that's the second challenge. That's like the more operational side. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely relate to sending small amounts first. I always tend to do that as well, you know, when making the bigger transactions. It's, I think, a common sense in the crypto industry, right? So yeah, I mean, very interesting, and thanks for that feedback. I think, you know, the listeners have learned a lot in regards to what it takes to set up these nodes and what challenges may occur. I think this will definitely, as it is already a quite big sector in the space, it will definitely significantly grow once mainstream adoption, you know, continues. So yeah, maybe taking it one step further, you mentioned that you've been at the Ethereum, or you're still in Paris, but you were at the Ethereum community conference, and on social media I heard a lot of positive things about it, right? A lot of the core Ethereum community was there. So can you share some insights of your experience, who you may have met, and yeah, how just generally your trip to Paris was?
Sure, it's amazing. I'm here now the second time. Last time was February last year, so it was one of the last conference before COVID. So, but it was colder and it was like more inside, and now it's summer and it was way more engaging outside the building. But it was busy still, even though the number of attendees was quite restricted. And you had to like get passes and corona tests and stems. So it was a little more hurdle, but overall, I think it was a very open and very engaging conference. We arrived Monday and had first a dinner with our partner company or sister company, Brainbot. So that was already great. They were a sponsor, so and they provide Brainboy, their own beer. So there's always like the main stuff you do during the day, and then there's at least as much, let's say, workish entertainment or entertaining work afterwards. So I wasn't at home before 12 the whole week. But and those after hour parties then get sponsored by big projects, obviously. Uniswap, for example, they rented a rooftop, I think on the highest skyscraper in Paris. That was quite amazing. But during the day, for me, this time is what was much more about connecting to people we know or we would like to engage with. because we brought along our two data scientists, Yakin and Karen. And Yakin actually was able to have a workshop on POPE, Proof of Attendance Protocol. And for POPE, Patricio, I'm not sure if he is the founder, but he's the main person for POPE, was also there. So it was quite interesting, and you could get, now I can't reach for them, all those little QR codes on each table, and obviously one for attending the whole conference. So we are a huge fan of POPE, and we have all the data for POPE on actually both chains, Ethereum mainnet and XDAI, and we were able to demonstrate how to query that data and bring out meaningful insight in that workshop. So that for us was quite a success, because this was the first workshop for Yakin. It was running really well, and there were quite a couple of attendants. And again, it was interesting data. So you could say on this conference, or the charm I experienced for that conference is that the relevant people from the relevant, let's call them blockchain natives, are there, and they're talking, casually, and still there's lots of education, entertainment, interaction on all sorts of levels, depending on who you know, who you get to know, what you're interested in. So there were several tracks, for example. And actually, I attended someone, like, I don't know if people know, there's this Kong thing where they printed money notes, and there's a little chip on there. And they did this last time. It was like a huge thing. And then they had all sorts of trouble. That's just like one thing. And there's many, many more like this, depending on what you're interested in. You can pick your poison. So I enjoyed it a lot. It was great for us as a company, for me personally. I hope so for my colleagues as well. And I would totally recommend to do those things. And it's typically with Ethereum, it's serious. And if you can afford it, in 2019, I met several people again on DEF CON in Osaka. So you actually, and then they might pitch something a little different, or they mature, or for example, with the Kong guys, they came up with problems and evolutionary steps compared to last year. So being part of the Ethereum conference, Ethereum community is an ongoing thing. It's really nice to sort of also find your place and find people or projects you like to work with, either technology-like wise or also personally wise. For example, we really like Igor from XDAI. And we had a really nice chat yesterday evening. I would say it started at 11 or 12-ish, and it went to 1 a.m. in the, on some rooftop party. And then you learn things you wouldn't learn otherwise, because then these people tell you what they do within their project. And so it's I could describe it as puzzle pieces, and then they fall in place, and next year they will fall again in different places, or the puzzle is getting bigger and more complete. And on the one hand, it's really challenging to wake up to a new newsletter week in Ethereum. Could be new stuff, relevant stuff, useless stuff, a scam, or even a competitor. But on the other hand, it's going on over years and years, and so I like the conference a lot, obviously. And it was
definitely
the first one after COVID, though.
That makes it even more special, right? And I think the general, seriousness was probably, and I don't want to offend someone, but a bit different than the Bitcoin Miami conference or other, events.
And I forgot, Vitalik was there as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, he held a very interesting, presentation, I think in regards to that, the use cases on top of Ethereum have to evolve further than solely, so to say, DeFi. And I think, aspects such as the metaverse, for instance, will definitely play a significant role here in the future. So at this stage, I would just like to quickly pose the Be in Crypto special community question of the week. And this week's question was to you specifically, what is your favorite tokenization use case? It doesn't have to be the most feasible one, but just generally broadly. I mean, there's so many, right? So what is it to you?
Oh, it's hard to say. Actually, I like a lot what you guys doing. So creating a legal instrument before the tokenization. So that's it's not like an asset I would prefer, but the method. So completing that method round trip, that's what I like quite a lot. And I think this will be getting better with each evolutionary step and each jurisdiction and each year. So, and I think it will be all sorts of things, and it will be in the end also commoditized. So I mentioned our infrastructure will go the way of the website, and I hope so that that tokenization does exactly the same. So maybe it will be dirt cheap at some point. Actually, I had this conversation with Heiko Hayes around that time when the Ethereum stuff came up, and he said maybe the donor guy is able to hand out some shares from his Dönerbude, from his Döner stall at some point to maybe even some customers, which I find weird and not really probable. But as a mind experiment, to think that through, if it's really cheap to tokenize things, um, then
Mm,
there's obvious other puzzles like where's your market, who will
mm,
invest, and always the question of legal aspects. But overall, the trend is your friend. So the trend
mm,
I like a lot, and it will continue this trend to make it
mm.
easier, out of the box, yeah, and also legally feasible.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the positive feedback. I think generally like having standardization in this process definitely will also help, and obviously there you also need that certain degree of regulatory compliance in
Yeah,
place. So yeah, another, let's say, tokenization use case, so to say, it has been a big hype and probably it has been talked about a lot at the conference as well, are NFTs.
yeah,
NFTs, there's a lot of let's say, yeah, 27 ICO craze-ish stuff happening in that
yeah.
area, but there's also a lot of interesting use cases in regards to applying NFTs for IP or even identity in regards to role management. So to you, what do you think will the future of NFTs look like? And do you also think that in the future it could be possible that, for instance, because this is something that I experience a lot, that there's no transparent pricing when it comes to NFTs, right? Do you think that this may change, or there will be, let's say, price oracles that will be able to determine a fair evaluation of an NFT?
That is a really, the last part of your question is a really good question. I haven't thought about that yet. But NFT is an abstraction level. We are talking about a technology that is really applicable universally. So it's really hard to talk on that abstraction level. So I like the things where there's like a big reward. For example, used airplane parts. Or I now know of an NFC near chip, near field communication chip. You can actually bring that into molten metal, and it will still work. So, for example, the wheels of the car. I don't know the proper word in English. Anyways, they are really expensive. So if you actually can combine that with the real world properly in the use cases, I think there will be a huge value on that. Not just NFT art, which is now like a thing, or maybe they go for like, I think there's a company in Switzerland or even Liechtenstein that does tokenization of real art by scanning it with a laser or something. I'm not sure, maybe you know their name, but they're supposed to be really famous and high evaluation and whatnot. So yes, or wine, we are now talking about, I'm coming from the wine region, so therefore high-priced wine bottles. So, or what we just said, luxury goods. We now have a new customer, Ariane, who is doing authenticity, for example, for Breitling watches. And we now would like to join this organization as well as a technology provider. But all those things, I'm not really sure which will be best or quickest adoption. I'm really sure it will be hidden away from the customer. So they don't know that is an NFT, and it will just provide functionality, usability, productivity to them. Um, but And I'm also quite sure, as with everything blockchain, it will explode. There will be many, many, many more. So everything else, hard to guess. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're very much at the early stages, right, of NFTs still, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out, and maybe we'll see like some sort of NFT price oracle in the future, right? And it could be quite interesting, and could also potentially help a lot of people.
Yeah, and who does it? How would you set it up? So I think, yeah, one would need to think it through for at least another couple of minutes to
Mm-hmm.
come up with something that is, let's call it serious or solid.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, yeah, but it's definitely an option.
Yeah, definitely. I think very much at the beginning of this entire space, right? So
Yeah,
there's going to be a lot of different innovations coming in the future as well. So coming to the end of today's interview, which has been quite insightful, I'd like to ask you one more last question, and this is the question that I always ask my guests, and it's where do you see blockchain in 10 years from now?
yeah, I think we'll see a solid explosion and dimensional. So I'm very bullish, obviously. And in 10 years, it will be, actually, it is already productive, and
Mm,
users won't notice it and won't understand it. It will be whatever, a button or an icon or something, and they will just use it. It will be ubiquitous by 10 years, definitely.
mm,
And maybe we will see some breakage in between, some trouble, but overall it's already so diverse, and it's bringing so much productivity and new possibilities with digitization. I suspect, yeah, and the existing industry will have felt it by then,
mm,
meaning banks. So
mm.
in this thing, I always say banks is the new music industry. So I think they will all survive more or less. So there's always reasons for banks, but making money by sending money or by storing it somewhere, or making value by sending value or storing value, to formulate it better. I don't think that this use case or this business will, yeah, be there anymore in 10
Mm.
years.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, thanks so much for this interview today, Peter. It was very great
Likewise.
to have you on the show and to really listen to your in-depth knowledge of also not only the business cases, but actually the technology itself. Then I would say I'll wish you a couple of more days, maybe in Paris, a good
Thank you.
stay. And yeah, thanks so much. It was a pleasure to have you on the show.
Likewise. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. And to our listeners and viewers, as always, if you have any questions in regards to what any block analytics is doing, or especially in regards to nodes and data relevant topics, I'm sure you can reach out to Peter as always. And then generally, if you have any tokenization related questions or topics, you can always reach out to me. So thanks so much for the show, and see you guys next week.